Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and I have Michele Jech back with me today. It was a great episode. I enjoyed the last one.
Me too.
In the last episode, we got in a little bit into the nuances of communication. Mm-hmm. Let's go deeper into that.
I think there's a ton of nuance when it comes to communication and how we come across to others and how others receive us, specifically in the language and the words that we use. So last time we talked a little bit about it in the feedback standpoint, but on this, like on the other side of it, it's how you receive somebody else. There's a lot when it comes to the nuance of communication that isn't communicated when it comes to body language. It's like leaning in and making eye contact and seeing those things. But I also think there's a lot to be said in words. And something that I have observed really and started to put some language around just this year was minimizing words and the difference between like minimizing words and how that makes people come across. Mm-hmm. For example, I say the word just a lot. And I didn't think about it very much. But when I looked at that.
You're just a janitor.
Yeah. Or I just want to reach out real quick to tell you something. Well, I just want to follow up. I started my emails with I just, and I went through and I asked AI, like, how many times have I said this? And it was hundreds. Wow. I'm like, what is that about? And because I was sitting in a meeting with, around a table, and there were probably 13 other people around the table, and they were all older male executives. And I'm the only female in the room. And I was using the word just as almost like a permission to speak. Well, I just want to interject my thought real quick. Mm-hmm. And every time I heard the word just from the other side of the table, from the males, it was, well, it's just a quick thing that has to be done, right? I mean, it's just a few emails that have to be sent. It's just and it minimized the work.
Right.
And I minimized my voice. And I've been like, my radar's been up and I see it all the time. And what I have observed in my experiences as women, we use it as a permission. We use permission-based words to speak. And the majority of the males at the executive leadership level use it in a minimizing of work. And I'm curious if you've observed that, because I know you've worked with a lot of executives as well.
So now that you mention it, I don't know that I've paid attention to it in the gender roles, but certainly I definitely have seen as executives diminish the work. It's just this, right? And it's a classic, right? Well, it wouldn't take you that long to do that, right? Instead of saying, this is, so in that way, I'm talking down to the person. Or I can go, hey, Michele, we got to get this done. I know you got a lot on your plate. When do you think you could have this done?
That's right.
And you say, well, I think I could do Tuesday. I was really kind of hoping for Friday, but if you tell me Tuesday, it's more important that it gets done right. If you can get Friday, great, but for sure it's got to be Tuesday. You cool with Tuesday? Right now, I've invited you into the process instead of being, well, it's not that much work. I mean, it's only going to take you, it's just a few hours, right?
Stick a pen in my eye. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think it's interesting. What other nuances, words have you picked up on?
I have picked up on only. Only is a minimizing word.
It's only a quick fix.
It's only a quick fix. It's
only a few minutes.
That's right. It's only a few minutes. Well, I only want to, and at least from what I've observed in myself, other words are might or I think. And when I say those things, well, I think we could do this, think and could, instead of in my experience, this has worked in the past, and I'm curious if we could apply it here, what the outcome might be. That just comes across so much more confident instead of, I think we could try to do this and see what happens. As a receiver of what I am sharing, there's more confidence in that. So like think, just, I believe, instead of in my experience, there's just a different tonality and a confidence. Now that has to be coupled with like a confident posture. But those are some that I've seen from a minimizing. And the other thing around nuanced conversation and words that I've observed is using like definites, using definitive language is probably a better way to say it. Joel, you always do this, or Michelle never does that. I've never seen you do. I've always seen, and when we speak in definitive language, not just about other people, but about our work, right? Or in the office environment. And especially when we're talking about people who aren't in the room and work of people who aren't in the room, when we put definitive language around that, it automatically raises defenses. Because it's like, hold on, there's nothing that's definitive. We may have observed, like I observed this happen on the last project that we were on is different than
an always
or a never. And it creates conversation. I like how you said it invites into the conversation versus puts walls up is another one. Have you had an experience with definitive language and how that's?
Well, for sure. I'm married.
Totally.
You always, you never, right? Like anything, if you go to marriage counseling,
Totally
it's like, cut those words out.
100%.
So we know it in the married life, but we don't practice it in corporate life,
right?
Which is silly. But yeah, the definitive language that really that comes across as extreme, and so people that are aware that if you use that language, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, right? Because if you're sitting in the room and I come in to make a case on something, and I'm like, well, it always and it never and blah, blah, you're tuning out my message because this guy is, too emotionally attached to this issue. And so it's difficult for you to receive what I have to say because I'm talking in extremes. And I was thinking a little bit more about some of what we were sharing a moment ago. For example, I'm gifted with a very dominant personality. And so I've actually been coached in executive sessions to use actually some of the phrases you say is not good for you to use, right? And so there's biases both ways. So if I'm because of my dominant bearing, if I say, well, you should, that's judgmental.
Yes.
And if I say, have you considered?
Yes.
Right. But in your role climbing up the corporate ladder, if you go, well, have you guys considered? It looks like you're asking permission. So there's an expectation for you to say, for me to be at this table, I've got to have a little more dominance or a little more assertion. So I think we should do this. Right. And so I'm wondering how that plays into.
Really interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that you're hitting on something that, I hadn't thought about it like that, but I think you're hitting on something that there's a difference between, and maybe there's some nuance in language like that with words depending on personality types. I've always gotten the feedback. I'm a pretty dominant personality too. And I've always gotten the feedback, like Michelle's a bull in a china shop, and you can attract more bees with honey rather than vinegar.
But I've read this, and I think it's true. And you and we decided before the show we were going to go there.
Let's do it.
I think there's some truth, though, to if a woman behaves just like a man would in the same situation, she can be seen as too much.
Oh yeah.
And there's words that go with that. We don't use them in these circles.
100%.
And so you have to wrestle with that. I think personalities too. So if I'm naturally a dominant person and I'm a male and I'm 6'2" and I'm 250 pounds, I'm the biggest guy in the room a lot of times. And so I have to be more careful with some of the words I choose. I actually have to soften my message sometimes because otherwise go, well, he's a jerk. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, that's not my heart. I'm trying, but so I've had coaching, and now you got me thinking about if those coaches were wrong or not.
Well, I think that so into your coaching, if I was coaching you on that side of it with that perspective, and I'd coach myself on this, there is a difference from a nuance of communication standpoint that can be for dominant personalities. Like, let's just put the dominant personality on it. That is, there's a difference between coming from curious and sounding accusatory.
Accusatory, yeah.
Yeah. And you just mentioned it in how I think we should do this. Well, if Joel says that, and you're naturally just a more dominant personality and you sound more confident and are sure of yourself, then it sounds like if I'm a direct report or on a team, it's direction. Mm-hmm. It is 100% the way that we have to go, and we can't push back against that. Versus inviting somebody into the conversation and saying, in my experience, this has happened in the past and we've applied this. What do you think that would look like if we did it here? Or what are things that we would need to consider? Mm-hmm. And then you open it up. Or, because I struggle with this all the time, and I'm very aware, my team would tell you, I just know that when I'm going 100 miles an hour, I make statements that are probably really questions. And I just know. And in my brain, I don't slow down enough to do it. So I have learned with my team to either qualify or to give them permission to fully ask me the question. I'm like, hey, I'm going to make some statements. They're really questions because it's how I process, but this is ideation. We're in ideation right now. And so let's ideate, and you push back. And then when we go into, okay, now it's time to go into execution, and this is direction. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the conversation, I do this with my boss, where we'll ideate, and then he'll make a statement sometimes, and I'll go, is this direction or is this ideation? So we're clear on what I need to do. So we can use softer language and not be so directive, but we can walk away with clarity at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And I think that's good leadership too, is to delineate. I had a boss that we often did our meetings over lunch. He had a crazy schedule. I had a crazy schedule. And so we'd often do ours as lunch meetings. Well, he had a fun sense of humor. And so we'd start off the meeting, just kind of being silly in some form or fashion, telling a joke or, a story or having some fun, and then he'd go, okay, let's get to work. Well, most people would be like, did he just cut Joel off? Like, did Joel upset him? And I just knew, okay, for my personality, that worked. But for a different personality, that might have crushed him, Yeah. But he knew he had that liberty with me, and I wasn't offended by it. Yeah. And so we could enjoy each other's company for a couple minutes, and he just decided, okay, let's get busy. Mm-hmm. And to go straight into work mode. Yeah. It was a definite shift.
Yeah. That light switch from personal to work. It's like, turn it off, turn it on.
But he knew his audience.
Yes. Right? That's exactly right.
And the best leaders I've worked with do what you describe is, hey, I want to get everybody's input for the next little while. Mm-hmm. And okay, thank you. Based on that, here's what I want to do going forward. Mm-hmm. Right. So you go from the ideation to the determination and the direction. Yeah. You said something a minute ago about receiving feedback as a leader. Mm. How do you create that environment where your direct reports can go, hey, boss, I need to give you some feedback. I have a question. I don't understand. What you said was offensive. There's all kinds of ways that can go. How do you start to open that door?
I think you have to ask. And I think it's the leader's responsibility, and it's incumbent on us to ask for it. Because it's really, if we think about how hard it is for most personalities, are conflict avoidant. And so if most personalities aren't like, let's go have that conflict, that is going to take a ton of courage for somebody to come. It's going to take a ton of courage for somebody to even answer a question on how I can improve when I ask, let alone to say, man, that really hurt. And I'm going to tell you something that's going to be really hard. Like, there's multiple steps that they have to take courageously. So I think it's on us to ask. So there's a couple of questions, and we have to ask regularly and then put qualifications on it. So I will ask the question, hey, what do I need to stop doing to be more effective and to help you be effective in your role? What do I need to start doing that I'm not currently doing? And what do I need to continue doing that's already working? And asking for their opinion on those are tangible work things that help them be better at their role. So that's in a work environment. But then I would also mix that up with, if we have high EQ and if we are self-aware about what's happening in a room, you should be able to like detect. And I think anybody has the spider senses to go, something just shifted in the room when the temperature changes a little bit and people get uncomfortable and start to fidget. But when that happens and you don't know as the leader what has happened, it's a blind spot. So how do you ask for feedback around your blind spots? Mix in hey, Joel, we were just in that meeting and I felt the temperature change after I said XYZ. What did it feel like to be on the other side of me when I said that? Mm-hmm. Because then anybody will go there and have courage to say how they felt versus what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. What did I do that made that happen? Mm-hmm. It was like, what did it feel like to be you on the other side of me when I said that? Or another question is, what were you thinking that I was thinking when I said that or when you said that to me? Because then it begins to break down those barriers of the nuance between the two and to be more effective. Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Do you have any tips or tricks on what you've experienced to how you ask for feedback?
I think most people are hesitant to give feedback. Mm-hmm. And so I like the questions you've asked. One I'll use in passing pretty much every week. What do you need from me? Mm-hmm. Which gets the conversation going around what resources they need, but that starts to build a level of trust that I'm interested in who they are and what they're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. So it's not really the questions you ask as much as it's creating a climate for them to be able to, have conversations. Mm-hmm. I think one-on-ones are important.
Absolutely.
And I heard, what's the gentleman's name? Marcus Buckingham, Global Leadership Summit, probably 6-8 years ago. He said all the research, and that's what he does for a living, all the research points to, my words, not his, if you can't do a one-on-one with each of your direct reports, you need to get out of leadership. Mm-hmm. If you can't do it weekly. Mm-hmm. And most leaders don't.
Yeah.
And because life's too busy, too much going on, right? But I think, and he wasn't talking long periods of time. He said it was like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. You just got to have that check-in.
The check-in.
And so I think having that check-in, when I've been in new positions, that's allowed very short, within the first 90 days, somebody's able to go, hey, the way that meeting's running, I'm not sure there's a lot of value in that. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm the new guy and I'm already getting that kind of feedback. Or, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's this kind of dynamic going on, or there's this rub in the team, or and I think a lot of that has to do with that regular frequency of check-in to say, hey, I value your voice enough. I'm going to give you regular time out of my schedule to have this conversation. And I'm really just asking you, how'd last week go? What do you got going on this week? And what do you need from me? But it's all about what do you need and what are you doing, right? And so I think that starts to, it's not, the questions you gave were great ones. And I think I'm going to steal one of them soon. But I think that creates the environment for the feedback.
Yeah. And I think what also builds trust in that, especially as you're talking about somebody who's new and is giving that and the courage to share some of that, hey, this isn't going well, have you noticed, is closing the loop is incumbent on the leader, that even if we're not going to, if we disagree, if we're not going to go that direction, if we're not, like closing the loop with our direct reports and the people that gave that feedback in a way that's like, hey, thank you for that. I considered it. I went and investigated. I'm not at liberty to share with you, but I just want you to know I did something with it. That then builds trust to say, okay, I can trust Joel that even though I don't know that he's letting me know he's doing something with my feedback, so he cares about my thoughts, or he's letting me know he disagrees and that's okay, but he heard me. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what creates a culture and an environment that invites that feedback. You know, Joel, a question that I just recently started using, like within the last 2 months, is I would ask the question all the time. So I'm doing a lot of giving direction and projects and forward movement and moving roadblocks. And I'm like, what, do you have any questions? Like I ask, we get this all the time. We ask this all the time. Do you have any questions? What questions do you have? And it'll be like crickets. But then when things start moving forward, it clearly was unclear and there should have been questions asked. So a question that I just started asking that I'm getting more responses to, and I don't know how it's fully going to work out, full circle, is what needs clarity. Is I've given that and I go, what needs clarity? Because then it takes the pressure off of the receiver to come up with questions that are intelligent. They don't know what they don't know yet, but it puts the burden on me as the communicator and as the leader to say, what needs clarity that equips you to be able to do your role until the next question comes up or allows you to move forward. And that puts the, how can I be more clear and invites more response. So
that's good. I like that one too.
Yeah.
Michele, any final thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
I would just say nuance in communication is so much bigger than we know and that we observe. And once we see it, what I love about it is once we see it, we can't unsee it. And once we're aware, we're not going to ever not be aware. And I think we can always improve on our nuance on conversation. And you bringing up like in marriage, that is the best training ground ever because there's full transparency and no need for permission to get feedback because it's freely given. And I think that as leaders, as if we just never stop learning in this space and always look for the effectiveness of our communication, that's just going to make everybody around us better and ourselves better.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Michele.
Thanks so much, Joel.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.